Hi, my kith and kin. This is Gloria Ndoro-Mkombachoto. Welcome to another episode of It Heartfelt with Gloria. Sit down, relax, but always comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Hello, my kith and kin. My name is Gloria Ndoro-Mkombachoto. My YouTube family, welcome to another episode of It Heartfelt with Gloria. This is the Kith and Kin Nation. Subscribe to the channel. If you are already part of the Kith and Kin family, please comment indicating your views on our podcasts, because that will help us in bringing you the relevant content in the future. Today we are talking about why have most Black businesses failed to become intergenerational businesses. I repeat, why have most businesses failed to become intergenerational businesses? By this I mean an entrepreneur from a family, a father or a mother, a brother or a sister starts a business, and that business lasts during their lifetime. After they pass on, there is no business anymore. So we are interrogating those issues around intergenerational businesses for Black people. Now, the plight of Black people in entrepreneurship in the labor market is one of the most understudied topics by economists, sociologists, and other social scientists. Most of the literature available is on studies of African Americans in the US, but very little research has been done on Africans in the subcontinent. There are so many research questions that we need to address for our sub-region, and over time we are going to answer these questions in this podcast. I've developed these research questions to cover a period from 1890 to 2020. From 1890 to 2020 is a staggering 130-year period. But actually, 130 years is not a long time. It is a long time in human years. I do not know anyone who has lived up to 130 years, but a breed of entrepreneurial people, the earliest Europeans to set foot on African soil, were the Portuguese in the 15th century in 1471. This is a 552-year period. That was 552 years ago, actually. They were not settlers because the locals were defiant and did not want them to grow roots during that time. But subsequently, new settlers came in the sub-region, and around the 1890 period, when the British South Africa Company, started by Cecil John Rhodes, initiated a colonization project by whites backed by the Royal Charter from Queen Victoria. This British South Africa Company ruled over the country, and that began in 1890 when the Pioneer Column marched to Mashonaland, founded Fort Salisbury, and settled in the area. And since then, generation after generation has been affirming each other in business. They developed what I refer to as a minority syndrome that made them support each other, and the trust was enabling each and every one from their community. No one was left behind. Therefore, it is vital and a key imperative for us to unpack, to understand, and to utilize the very same tactics that made them conquer, win, and triumph to become big giants in business against all odds. We need the answers to these fundamental questions, because what we face today could possibly be resolved from answers of that past. We can learn from that past. It is a past that might not have been good for the majority of people in the sub-region, but we must never throw away the baby with the bathwater. There is always something to be retrieved from our history. Now, some of the questions, the research questions that we want to look at and interrogate are around: how did the nature and pace of industrial growth differ between Rhodesia and Zimbabwe? And what role did racial dynamics play in these trends? Number 2, how did the racial composition of entrepreneurs and industrialists change between the Rhodesian and the Zimbabwean periods? And what factors influenced this change? Number 3, what strategies were used by white and black entrepreneurs and industrialists, respectively, to navigate the socio-political landscapes of Rhodesia and Zimbabwe? Number 4, how did government support for entrepreneurs and industrialists differ between Rhodesia and Zimbabwe? Most importantly, how did this support differ along racial lines? Number 5, what are the prominent examples of successful and unsuccessful businesses across these periods and racial lines? And what factors led either to their success or their demise? Number 6, how did the racial transition from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe affect the wealth and income distributions within the country? Number 7, what were the social implications of the business trajectories of black and white entrepreneurs and industrialists? And how did these implications evolve from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe? We need to understand these dynamics because Rhodesians were very successful businesses and they had a lot of support from their government, and we need to unpack the implications of having that kind of support from your government. Number 8, how did global geopolitical factors and sanctions impact the business environment and opportunities for black and white entrepreneurs and industrialists? Number 9, how did the shift in government from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe affect institutional environment, the institutional environment for entrepreneurship and industrialization in the country? Number 10, what impact did the colonial legacy have on entrepreneurship and industrial development in Zimbabwe post-independence in 1980? So what we are saying is, essentially for 90 years of the colonial project, this project ensured that blacks were restricted in what type of entrepreneurship, restricted in specific areas of entrepreneurship that they were only allowed to operate in. And then perhaps the last question we will be interrogating as we continue with this series on entrepreneurship is, how has the historical interplay between race, entrepreneurship, and industrialization in Rhodesia and Zimbabwe influenced current economic conditions and entrepreneurial opportunities in the region? There is not enough literature on the subcontinent, for example, on why a diversified industrial conglomerate like the Insco Group has become an oligopoly, if not a monopoly, in the sectors that it is operating in our sub-region. If we zero in on INSCO as an example, it started off in 1987, that is 36 years ago, with Chicken Inn, and expanding to Baker's Inn and Creamy Inn in 1995, which is 28 years ago. Yet today, in 2023, they are still growing, and they are now a listed entity on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, whose price per share is actually undervalued at under $1 United States dollar per share. And yet, when you look at their projected earnings of 2023, they are inching closer to $1 billion at 800 million in annual revenues in all the markets that they are operating in. During the 36-year period, the INSCO Group has been in operation, the only black company that has grown in leaps and bounds, having been issued a telephony license in 1998, which is 25 years ago. After having started the company in 1993, which is 30 years ago, is Econet. Their expansion into Africa and beyond guaranteed their success. Yet Zimbabwe has remained a profitable location for them for the longest. The African Banking Corporation, trading under the brand name Bank ABC, used to be a wholly owned Zimbabwean bank until it started expanding into Africa through mergers and acquisitions, eventually being sold to Atlas Mara. Its primary listing is on the Botswana Stock Exchange, and its secondary listing remains on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, with operations in Botswana, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and a group service office in South Africa. Now, even though they are institutional and other investors owned by private foundations of old money families in the world, INSCO Africa and Econet have become generational businesses. And this is very important to note. Econet and INSCO Africa have become generational businesses. But why, should we ask? On a per capita basis, do we have so few black-owned conglomerates with multi-million-dollar turnovers? Why? Are racial differences in family business backgrounds enough to explain why black-owned businesses lag substantially behind white, Indian, Jewish, or any other nationality-owned businesses in terms of turnover of the business, in terms of profits of the business, in terms of employment size, in terms of survival probabilities that lead them to intergenerational businesses? I'm going to be lumping some of the internal, or you might want to call them personal aspects, and some of the external, I'm going to refer to them as non-personal aspects together as we try to unpack the question that we are asking: are racial differences in family businesses, in family business backgrounds, enough to explain black-owned businesses lag substantially behind other nationalities-owned businesses in terms of turnover, profits, employment size, survival possibilities that lead them to intergenerational businesses? Now, I'm going to be unpacking some of the issues in the next podcast. But most importantly, I have raised 11 questions, research questions, that we are going to be interrogating into the future so that we can unpack some of the answers that we need today to get our people to run businesses with intergenerational ideas in mind. So please go and subscribe and write comments, but most importantly, start reading up on some of these issues so that as we go through them, you understand what it is that we are talking about. On that note, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the episode of today. It's very important that you share with us your comments about what we are sharing with you, but most importantly, some of the issues that you might feel are not being covered with our podcast or other podcasts. But please do not forget to subscribe. That will inform us in giving you more value in the future. Thank you.